The UK Cyber Essentials scheme is being updated on the 24th of January 2022. Find out more in this video what your business needs to do to work towards compliance against the new controls. But before we start, my name is Marcus Dempsey and I run an information security company called IMSEC Governance, which is based within the northeast of England. We help businesses secure their systems and processes through the provision of Cyber Essentials certifications, penetration testing, security consultancy and more. Visit our website for more information if you need to. But if you haven't heard of the Cyber Essentials scheme before, well, Cyber Essentials is a UK government-backed scheme which has been designed to help protect your business and others against the most common cyber-based attacks. The scheme was released way back in 2014 and has since then undergone several updates over the coming time. The scheme comes in two levels. The basic version, which is a self-assessed version, which requires minimal evidence, as well as the plus version, which is also the higher audited version of your self-assessed version. The scheme aims to protect businesses through the implementation of 5 key technical controls, which are firewalls, secure configuration, user access control, malware protection, and security update management. Through implementing these 5 technical controls, you can further help protect your business, your customer, and your supplier data, as well as your personal information within the business. This helps to reduce the overall risk of becoming a target or suffering from a cyber-based incident. Now, as the name suggests, these controls are the basic essentials you and your business should be applying. Whether it's ensuring that antivirus is installed and kept up to date, that your operating systems and software are still supported and also being kept up to date, or that your firewall is enabled and configured to block any type of data from the internet. Now, on this channel there's quite a bit of content already about the Cyber Essentials scheme, so feel free to check out these videos after this video here. So now that we know what the Cyber Essentials scheme is all about, this video is going to talk about what changes are coming in 2022, why they're coming, and what you need to do to actually stay compliant against the new controls and changes. With the first release of Cyber Essentials being released in 2014, the amount of technology and things like that have changed over the years, so Cyber Essentials needs to keep up to date. So let's discuss what the changes are, what changes are coming into effect from January the 24th, 2022. The first change is an important one. It's to do with pricing. The pricing will now be charged depending upon the size of the business. The new pricing is now as follows. For micro businesses with 9 or less employees, the price will stay at £300 plus VAT. For any small businesses with 10 to 49 employees, the price is going to increase to £400 plus VAT. For medium businesses with 50 to 249 employees, the price will be £450 plus VAT. And lastly, for large businesses with over 250 employees, the price is going to be £500 plus VAT. Again, all these prices will change on the 24th of January 2022. Now, let's get on to the actual scheme related changes. The first new change or addition to the scheme will be, which is going to impact everyone either renewing the certification or achieving it for the first time, is all to do with cloud-based services. If your business has any type of business-related data or services which are hosted within a cloud-based environment, this cloud-based service will now be in scope from January's change date. This means that you as a business will be responsible for ensuring that all the controls for Cyber Essentials are implemented within the environment. But I hear you say, what does this mean? I hear you ask. Well, for an example, if you're using Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, or any of the cloud vendors, and you have a virtual machine running, for example, you must ensure that the virtual machine is kept up to date, it's patched within the 14 days, firewalls are enabled, password policies and everything are in compliance with the Cyber Essentials scheme. But it doesn't just stop there. Even if you're using cloud platforms such as Xero for your financing, Microsoft 365 or anything else, you have to also ensure that those cloud vendors are also in compliance with Cyber Essentials. It'll be up to you, the business, to find this out and gather the evidence to make sure that you are compliant with the scheme. But what defines a cloud-based service under the scheme, I hear you ask? Well, a cloud-based service includes infrastructure as a service, IaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service, SaaS. Basically, this means that any service whereby you manage, control, update any systems or services which interact with your business data is in scope. So next is a change regarding security updates. From January, the security update requirement is slightly changed in that the requirement of only having to apply updates which have had a CVSS score of 7.0 or above is no longer relevant now. Now, you must apply all high and critical updates for all systems and applications and services within 14 days of release moving forward. This means that if you are hosting any web services, for example, which are auto scale or resilient, you'll have to ensure that you've got processes in place to ensure that all those systems are automatically updated as we move forward. Now, this could be quite a challenge for a lot of businesses, and I can also see quite a lot of pushback from businesses looking at this change, purely for the fact that it's going to be a lot of work. However, this being put in place to ensure that a lot of cloud systems are now being secured by default moving forward, and I can see it also being a good thing for that. Now, the next change which is coming is to do with multi-factor authentication. This new requirement should hopefully be nothing new to anyone who is using cloud-based services. However, under the new Cyber Essentials scheme, you must ensure that multi-factor authentication is enabled and is in use by everyone within the business. It will now be mandatory for multi-factor authentication, or MFA, to be used for cloud-based administrative accounts from January 2022, and will be mandatory for any normal user access accounts accessing any cloud-based services from January 2023. Now, although this is a positive move to ensuring that businesses have their cloud-based systems protected, I can also see that this is going to be tripping up a lot of businesses moving forward, mainly through the lack of user training, additional overhead, and things like that. Now, moving on from multi-factor authentication, it's changes to password authentication. From 2022, password authentication will get more attention to help safeguard from brute force attacks with user accounts and protection against weak password policies. As part of the scheme, you're going to have one of the following items in place for your password and accounts. You're going to have the use of multi-factor authentication, throttling the rate of unsuccessful or guessed passwords, the locking of user accounts for no more than 10 unsuccessful password attempts, and as part of helping to further ensure the quality of your passwords, the technical controls have also suggested in the scheme to ensure that one of the following are applied. When you are using multi-factor authentication and you are also using a password, you will have to be using a password length of at least 8 characters in length, ideally more, and using a password manager, or at least that's my recommendation anyway. Or you're going to have to be using a minimum password length of at least 12 characters with no maximum password length restrictions if not using MFA, or if you are going to be using a minimum password length of at least 8 characters with no maximum password length, and in implementing automatic blocking of passwords or having some kind of deny list. Now, continuing on with the security-based theme, the next change is going to be to do with device locking. There is a new requirement for the scheme, and it's based around the locking of any devices that you use within the business, whether this is a PC, mobile phone, or a tablet. If you can unlock your device, you will need this to apply this change. This change helps you to ensure that your devices are going to be protected from unauthorized people accessing maybe a mobile phone or mobile device or anything like that. So when you go and lock your devices, you must ensure that you have a password set and that the minimum password or PIN length is at least 6 characters in length to unlock your device. Homeworking, which is the next change, has had some work done to it as well, although it's not too much. It is mainly based around the clarification after some teething issues from last year when initial home-based working was implemented and introduced into the Cyber Essentials scheme. There was originally a lot of pushback around home-based routers. After the last 2 years, most businesses have been working from home in one aspect or another. When it comes to Cyber Essentials, anyone who is working from home for any amount of time is classified as a home worker under the scheme. This means that any devices which are used by the home worker and has access to business data or services is in scope of the scheme, regardless of whether the devices are owned by the business or not. This could include a computer, a tablet, a mobile device, or anything else. This means that you, as a business, will have to ensure that anyone who uses their own devices for accessing business-related data and that their devices are in line with the Cyber Essentials scheme. So you're going to have to ensure that antivirus is in place, that updates are being applied, and firewalls are also enabled for any systems using the business data. So this could be a big impact for home users. It should be noted, however, that home routers, which are provided by the user's Internet Service Provider or ISP, are not in scope of the Cyber Essentials scheme, although you will still have to list the home network as part of the location when it comes to actually completing the self-assessment. So you could just say home network. However, if a business provides a router to the staff member, then this will be in scope and must comply with the Cyber Essentials scheme controls. For example, updates need to be applied, such as firmware, and default credentials need to be changed as well. Now, lastly, when talking about home networking, if a home-based user uses a virtual private network, or VPN, then this will actually transfer the boundary or scope to the corporate firewall or the virtual cloud firewall from the user's home. Next up is thin client, or dumb terminals, or whichever you like to call them. Have always been as part of the scope. However, it's been further clarified, and there's more questions based around them. Although these thin devices technically don't store any information, they can actually connect to the internet and access your business data through a remote desktop session, for example. Therefore, you must also put these devices in scope. You will need to ensure that the thin client devices are always kept up to date and that any firmware is applied as per the Cyber Essentials controls. Like operating systems and applications, any thin clients will need to be supported by the manufacturer and receive the necessary security updates such as firmware and things like that. For the first year, from 2022 to 2023, this will only be an informational question. However, moving from January 2023 onwards, any unsupported thin client devices will actually be a failure or non-compliance. The next change is a slight change in the way you actually list your devices when it comes to actually listing the devices within the scope. Now you will also need to list the model and type of the device being used along with the operating system version. For example, you will have to list, we have 25 Dell Vostro 5515s running Windows 10 Pro version 20H2. Now I can see this being a big issue for a lot of people logging a lot of the information, especially if you don't actually have asset registers. So now is the time to log all the information and get it all there for you. Now if you don't actually log this information, it's likely that the self-assessment will be pushed back by your assessor and ask for more information. Mobile devices is another area which has had some tweaks to it and hasn't really changed, but it is now more enforced as it always appears to pop up when we do assessments. But all mobile devices and tablets, regardless if they're a business or personal use, are within scope by default. So for example, if they access or process any business related data such as email, they will be in scope. Even if it's not connecting physically to the corporate network, it will be in scope. So for example, if you're on a 4G network, you're accessing email and it's a personal device, you will have to ensure that that device is kept up to date, it is patched and it is running a current version of iOS or Android that is supported by Cyber Essentials. Now another area which is seeing some clarification is in the use of account separation. This is another area that always seems to throw people when I'm doing assessments. But within Cyber Essentials, you must not use an administrative account for your day-to-day activities. You must have account separation. You must have two accounts, one administrative account that you use for configuring and installing software, and a lower level normal user account that you use for your day-to-day user accounts. Now for example, for Microsoft Windows, by default it installs a default admin account that you use. Now moving forward, you're going to have to ensure that that's actually disabled or it's changed down to a lower level account, and then you have an additional administrative account later on. Now for Macs and Linux machines, by default they come with root account privileges. You'll also have to do the same there. Have another account that is only a lower level account, and then you have that root level account as well to use for later on. Again, administrative accounts can't have email accounts associated to them, and they cannot be used for general web browsing as well. Backups is now mentioned within the scheme moving forward. Now backups isn't going to be marked or graded or anything like that, but it is just a point of awareness and making people realise that they do still need to apply backups, because you'd be surprised how many people don't actually perform backups within the business. And that's it for all the changes for the Cyber Essentials basic part of the scheme. Next up, we're going to be talking about some changes to the Cyber Essentials Plus, which is coming forward on the same date. Now, for businesses that are looking to achieve Cyber Essentials Plus after the 24th of January 2022, there's going to be two additional tests, which are a test to confirm account separation between the user and administrative accounts. So, for example, we as an auditor will ask you to perform an operation on the devices which are in scope of the audit, and you must show that you can use administrative account to perform an action. So for example, this test will ensure that you are not using a privileged account for day-to-day use. The second test is going to be confirming that multi-factor authentication is enabled for any cloud-based services. This will be a test where we as an auditor will check you prompted to enter MFA credentials. So for example, we may ask you to log into a Microsoft 365 portal if applicable, and check to see if you're prompted for additional information before being granted access to the actual portal. And that is it. That's all the changes pretty much. It's quite a bit to consider. There's a lot happening, and it's going to move forward as we go through the years. Cyber Essentials is evolving. There's lots of changes coming on, and I can see a lot more changes happening throughout 2022, 2023 moving forward. Now, if you want to have a little bit more information about Cyber Essentials, check out our website. I'll put the link in below the video. We've got quite a few blog articles about that, with answering all your questions and things like that. And yeah, like, subscribe to the video. If you like this content, let us know. It's important for us. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them down below the video and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Thanks very much.